the episode that almost didn't happen of this podcast.
It almost didn't happen?
Yeah, because you didn't believe that I won your customs, and I was so hurt by that. I almost quit the whole thing. We could have been one and done.
I legit did not think you were even in the game. So when you said that, I was like, wait, he's not playing, is he?
This is where you cut to the actual, clip of me winning and you not believing me.
He doesn't believe me? Wait, Joey, was it actually you? I believe you. I believe you. The only reason I didn't believe you was because I didn't see your name in the game, but I believe you.
Yeah. After seeing that. Yeah.
Welcome in to the second episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben.
I'm Joey.
Welcome, everyone. We are now officially not only in MP4 form, but also in MP3 form. Podcast is now available on Spotify, Apple, and anywhere pretty much that you get your podcasts. Check it out on there. Also, if you have any questions going forward, hit us up on Twitter at Hoth Hangout or email us your question at hothhangout@gmail.com. Episode 4 of Andor came out yesterday, or I guess today at the time of this recording. Yesterday, if you're watching this the day it goes live, and pretty great episode. But I guess before we get into the meat of the content of that episode 4 of Andor, Joey, how are you doing?
Doing well. Was excited to. It streamed last night, and I almost stayed up to watch it at 2 a.m. But I decided I was real close. I was about 30 minutes away from just staying up, and I was just watching Twitch. My buddy Steven. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take a 30-minute nap, and I'll wake up at 2 and then watch it. Of course, I never woke up until the next morning. So I did have to wait until the next day today to actually watch it. But no, yeah, I was excited. Doing stuff like this really is always so fun to work with other people like you. And yeah, so I was excited to watch the episode, take notes, and then, yeah, ultimately talk about it tonight.
Yeah, I have not stayed up. So my plan for both the first 3 episodes, which came out on the same day last week, and then for the 4th episode, which came out earlier today at 2 a.m. our time, was to stay up and watch them as they came out. That did not happen with either episode.
Yeah.
And so last night I was pooped and I went to bed early, but watched the episode today. Had to break it up into pieces because I didn't have a time where I could put my full and undivided attention into it, which for me, watching a TV episode like that is kind of annoying because I want to be like fully engulfed and like,
Sure.
and just like take it all in for what it is. But, I had to do what I had to do, and I still really enjoyed the episode. Lots to talk about when it comes to episode 4. Of course, picking back up where we left off on episode 3. Do you want to talk more about the overall themes of this episode, or just hop straight into the plot of kind of what was going on?
Let's do what we did last time. Just the themes and see what kind of discussions we can have.
Sure, yeah. So episode opens. We're on a ship that Luthen and Andor are both on. Andor still doesn't really know a whole lot about Luthen, and Luthen seems to know a heck of a lot more about Andor, obviously, than he knows about him, vice versa. Also, cool note in this scene, the hyperspeed moment. I was like, oh,
yes.
it was. Did you feel like it was obviously cool to see because they've clearly been able to update the technology to make it look the way it did in the show, obviously compared to like the original trilogy,
the originals.
Or even the prequels. But there was like a part of the hyperspace that I was like, it looks real. You know what? It's kind of like the Luke CGI thing, where it was like, it looks real, but you can tell it's not real. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the technology that they use now, it almost always has that line where it looks great, but there's just something a little off about
Yeah.
things, you know. Like I think about when they CGI Tarkin in Rogue One,
Hmm.
where it looked great, kind of at the theater. Certain angles look better than others, but when you kind of really have a chance to take a look at it, you're like, maybe the eyes look a little funny, or maybe it's because you know it's not fully real that
Right.
you're able to judge these types of things. I mean, obviously we've known that Peter Cushing, that was the actor for Tarkin, right?
I believe so.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it passed a while ago, so obviously it wasn't him, but I thought that was a really good job. But yeah, I think we'll always have that. Oh well, how real does it look? And I think just as fans, especially Star Wars fans, there's always going to be a little bit of criticism that we'll always put on
Sure.
the art that they make. But I thought it looked great. I think that scene uh, really gives you an idea of like some of the things that I've taken for granted, for instance, in Star Wars, like light speed, right, or just traveling in hyperspace, hyperspeed, and seeing Cassian see it for the first time
Hmm.
was, I'm like, oh right, I guess there are people that have never seen this, in the Star Wars universe. So having that moment, it was just a cool thing to see that not everyone is privileged to have these types of things, especially somebody that has Cassian's past.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then in addition to that, seeing the hyperspace moment, we also, I don't know if we knew this before or not. I thought it was the first time we learned that Andor was actually in prison at a certain point. I don't know if that was
Hmm.
information we knew already or not, but it caught my
Right.
ear, and so I made a note of it. I was like, oh wow,
Hmm.
I didn't know that myself. But
Right.
ultimately, Luthen is wanting to hire him and still not giving him a ton of information. And he puts out the offer of 5 days is what he wants to hire him for 200,000 credits. He says that it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be a lot, high stakes. Uh, and also makes a note, and this was kind of confusing for me personally. I didn't know exactly like why they were going after the place they're going after. I mean, I kind of get it
Right.
because he notes that the thing they're stealing, or I think I don't know if they're stealing it or blowing it up or what the plan is,
Right.
but it's the quarterly payroll for an entire imperial sect.
Right.
And when he said that, my first thought was kind of like I was a little bit confused because I thought it was going to be something more pertaining to what we would come to know as the Death Star.
Right.
And maybe it still is. Maybe we'll find out more information in the next episodes. But what were your thoughts on that in terms of like kind of what they're going after? Maybe
Mhm.
and even back further to when I mentioned the Andor coming out of prison. Even
Right. I mean, I was a little just like you. I think I was taken aback. I expected something a little bit more concrete. Some piece of technology, a map, or one of those things that we're kind of used to seeing in Star Wars of jumping into the bad guys' play grabbing, right? But something like a corporate payroll seemed kind of boring and like, wait, what?
yeah,
What is this? Is kind of outside of what you're used to. Um, Now I don't know if this is something that will be ultimately used as a list of some sort, as far as the Empire and what the rebels will do with it. Um, so I was also a little bit confused of how that all ties in. I mean, obviously there's going to be some type of payoff for being able to retrieve this item, but at this point I'm kind of lost. I was like, oh, okay, well, these are one of those moments when I just trust Star Wars and the
yeah,
directors. I'm like, all right, you're gonna take me somewhere. I have no idea how we will get there, but that's not my job to to figure out. You'll get me there, right?
sure, yeah, yeah. I was a little bit confused, but I'm intrigued by it, and it kind of, and we'll talk about this a little bit later probably, but kind of just ties more into the theme of especially the episode, but the show as a whole, and that and I noted this down in my notes. I feel like and we talked about this last time too. I don't feel like I'm watching Star Wars most of the time. I'm watching Andor. I feel like I'm watching
Hmm.
like a spy thriller but we're
Right.
we're
Yeah.
watching like the first act still, where it's like
Right.
there's not a whole lot in terms of action going on.
Right.
It's more like plot development, character
Yeah.
development, meeting these new characters. We got a couple new
Yeah.
characters this episode,
Yeah.
on both sides, Imperial and what we'll eventually come to know as the Rebels. One of the cooler ones I thought was Mon Mothma,
Of course.
which
Of course.
played by actress Genevieve O'Reilly. I thought she did a pretty good job of that portrayal. I enjoyed her in that role. But maybe I'll save discussing her for a little bit later because she doesn't come in until, I don't know, maybe quarter of the way, maybe almost halfway through the episode, something like that. Because after the scene with Luthen and Andor, we go directly to Coruscant, which this was the part of the episode where I was like, I feel like I'm watching like a weird Star Wars version of like a Jason Bourne movie. Or a James Bond, Bond, maybe James Bond.
Right, yeah.
Where it pops up on the screen.
It's it's like the how you mentioned it, it's like a spy movie.
Yeah.
It's like how every Mission Impossible movie starts with the first like 5 minutes is something really exciting and whatever. Tom Cruise is jumping off of a plane or whatever. And then there's about a 20, 30, 35 minute stretch of building the story, kind of going back to it or flash forwarding, whatever, but it's all non-action. It's all just like building the rest of the story. That's kind of what I felt this episode was. It was just, there wasn't a whole ton of action, like you said, if any, to be honest.
Right.
It was just all build up until, and which I understand, but as an episode itself, it's kind of like, you have to be able to really analyze it. Obviously, when there's gunfights and all that stuff, blaster fire going everywhere, it's a lot easier to consume because you're like, oh. But when you have an episode like this, it's really listening in on the conversations, who's talking, what the plan is, and all that stuff. So it challenges us as as consumers, as people watching Star Wars, to really pay attention and see what we can find on ourselves.
Sure. The average consumer, I don't think. I mean, I'm going to put it pretty bluntly. I don't think the average consumer would enjoy this episode. I think you have to really be I feel like I'm gatekeeping again. Sorry. I think to really appreciate the episode, it's easier to appreciate it if you come from a place of wanting to know the characters in the Star Wars universe rather than how is this episode going to entertain me right now?
Right.
Because to be completely honest, the episode wasn't entertaining in the traditional sense, but I still found myself enjoying it because we're meeting these new characters, we're learning about them.
Yes.
We're learning their motivations and why they're in these places they're at, even if it's just a little piece of that. The one character who kind of still falls into that we don't know so much about the motivations category is Karn. I forget his rank, if he's a lieutenant or where he falls, but still kind of getting the vibe that he's somehow going to be more important. And he showed up again in this episode briefly, but
he went back to his mom.
Yeah.
He was he was done with college,
right?
And he lost his first job, and he had to go move back in with mom, which was interesting because Coruscant. I mean, we know it's got all these levels because he was on Coruscant, right? When he got.
Yeah.
Was he on Coruscant? Right, yeah. So
when he was being kind of like reprimanded by his superior.
Reprimanded, right, yeah. And then he went down the elevator. By the way, I love Coruscant because it always shows you different, sides of it.
Yeah.
Because it's so vast, it's so many levels and all this stuff. So yeah, I don't know, because he went to the level where his mom is. And then there was an older woman on the other side of the hall or whatever you want to call it. And I just thought is that like the nursing home floor of of Coruscant? Just like all the the retirees.
Yeah, the Coruscant retirement homes.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a need for it, so it wouldn't be too out of it. But going back to what you were saying about the average viewer, I mean, when they were in that meeting, in the ISB meeting hall or whatever you want to call it, and I forget the one that's in charge, whoever he was, kind
I
of
think his
just
name
pointing at.
is. Are you talking about the leader at the table?
Yeah, right.
Partagaz. I don't know if I'm
Ortega, right? Yeah,
pronouncing it correctly, but
right.
yeah,
Yeah, but
he's
he's basically pointing out people and saying what they're doing wrong, and
yeah,
I mean, very. I mean, these are the types of things that we don't see in Star Wars, right? Where you're just like, well, I mean,
yeah.
we do get that round table feel of like, always the Empire doing that type of stuff and saying this is wrong. But to kind of see it in this light, I just thought it was funny. Like this
Yeah.
feels like an actual corporate job or something like that.
So that scene
But
actually reminded me a little bit of the scene, I believe it's New Hope, where you see Tarkin and the other like officers
yes,
all sitting around that table.
hmm
I feel like that scene definitely draws a lot from that original scene.
hmm
Um,
right,
but it's almost like more like bureaucratic and more
right,
mundane, which adds to what you're
yes,
saying, like that realness of it in a sense.
mhm, right. But but to you and me and to some Star Wars fans, words like Ryloth and Scarif and all that,
Yeah,
they were peppered in there for us,
all kinds
where
of
just like,
Easter eggs in there. Yeah.
right, yeah. So I know that the people on YouTube are gonna drill right into what every one of those are, but even with especially with the Scarif one, because that's gonna butt up right up against to Rogue One,
Hmm.
which I thought was a nice callback to say, well, this is how close we are. Because what are we, 5 or 6 years before the Battle of Yavin? Is that where we are in time?
Roughly, I'd probably
Yeah,
have to.
5 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
5 years before the Battle of Yavin. So yeah, that's just around that time of New Hope and Rogue One, obviously. So to hear that. Again, I think I talked about this our last episode. It's that tie-in with everything else. It's overlapping now, and we're seeing little pieces that will be that are put in place for later movies or shows and all that.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought it was also interesting in that scene specifically where it's Major Partagaz refers. I think I don't know. Remember if it's the other character that we get to know in that scene a little bit better is Supervisor Grandy, I believe.
hmm
And I think it may be her. It was another woman at the table who, he says, "What's our goal or what's our mission?" Here, and she kind of spits out this like automated response that's from some handbook that he cites.
hmm
And he's like, "That's why it's exactly wrong. We're not whatever she says they
Yeah, yeah.
were."
Yeah,
And he actually refers to them as healthcare providers. I was like,
right,
"Where's he going with this?"
right,
But the point he was making is that they are there to as he puts it, remove diseases. So that's kind of you get a sense of what his mindset is and how he approaches situations like as a member of the empire. His whole goal is if he sees something that is a disease to the
right,
empire, he's going to take it out and remove it.
right. And to make that analogy, it was really. I mean, it was kind of shocking to me. I mean, it makes sense because it makes sense from the lens of the Empire because that's what they're doing. That's why they go. That's why they have all the security and all these systems and all that, because they want to eradicate anyone that's against them.
Yeah.
So to view those rebel cells or any type of resistance as just a disease that they just need to cure.
Hmm.
I mean, that was a to me that was a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
Um, and to hear it obviously from somebody of that rank, and because that's obviously that's always been their view on it, but to hear it in those words was pretty powerful.
Hmm. The last thing I was going to comment on this scene, before we may be moving on to talking about some of the would-be rebels that we get to meet in the following scene, um, was with Grandy. I'm still not 100% sure. I can't remember from the episode that I watched 6 hours ago how they pronounced it. But she's I'm I'm interested to see what her motivations are. I'll put it that
Mhm.
way. Because I
Right.
think I could see her. She falls almost in the same category of characters as Karn for me,
Yes,
Although
I agreed.
I think, and this is just a gut feeling from watching the first 4 episodes, and maybe we can come back to this and see if any predictions come true. But I see Karn kind of eventually being a good guy, and with Grandy, I don't get that vibe as much. I get more of like almost like a Kylo Ren vibe in a way, where
Right. Wait, hold on. Is it Grandy or is it Dedra?
Dedra, that
Miro?
may be her first name.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I remember because I was watching it in the with the with the subtitles. I thought her name was Dedra and Grandy was someone else actually.
Oh, is that right?
I think
I may have
so.
miswritten. No, but
Yeah,
we
because one spoke and then the other spoke. Uh,
you're listening in on this live right now.
as you could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it says here on Wikipedia. This is our Google, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Major Partagas claimed that she was being intentionally vague about what she would do with the new resources demanded specifics. So remember, that was actually the first officer that was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say it was Deidre or Dedra
Okay,
was the
Deidre
actual person.
Miro, right?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that's
So Grandy then is okay, yeah. So Grandy I think is actually the opposing officer, the other lieutenant who Miro or Deidre wants the information from. Is that correct?
no, that's someone else.
There's too many
That's
lieutenants in this show.
There's too many lieutenants. Grandy was like one of the first ones to speak, I think.
Oh,
You
Grandy
couldn't
must
even
have
really
been
see their
the
face.
Grandy must have been. It says, anyways, throw out all the names I just put in there, and so replace them with Deidre. Deidre is the woman
Deidre, yeah.
who we're concerned with here.
Yes.
Deidre, her character is the one that I'm curious to see how that develops. I get a Kylo Ren vibe from her character, and that she like there's almost
Right.
like this weird like she definitely needs to prove herself. Like I feel like that's evident from the episode. And although they made an important emphasis with her that she's only been with them for a year. So they said it more than once. And what that typically means in a show or a movie, not always, but whenever they emphasize something like, extra like that doesn't feel like it pertains necessarily. Like they mention it once because, she's new and trying to like prove herself, but I think they mention it twice. I feel like she is maybe a rebel spy put in that spot. That's just the vibe I got from the first episode.
Okay.
Particularly because of the emphasis on the fact that she's only been there a year. And later on in the next episode, we hear about these rebels on the planet Aldani who have been working on this plan, because they're frustrated when Luthen brings in Andor, who he calls Clem in the scene. They're frustrated because they're like, with only 3 days left, implying that they've been working on this for a long time, right?
Right.
So I think Deidre, as I've found out, I think Deidre Miro, I guess is her last name. I think she is a rebel spy, and I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm calling it right now.
Okay.
That's my gut feeling.
All right. Yeah, and they do a good job once again on the having parallel timelines or whatever you want to call it with her coming in really early or really late and trying to make all these changes, and as well as Cassian going into their their rebel cell kind of late as well. And so those we have those subtle things where you just see the same path for each side.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, I had the same feel. I definitely was comparing her to what's her name, Karn, right?
Karn, yeah.
Yeah, where it was just that the new guy or the new woman that's there that wants to make all these changes and kind of trying to push, not necessarily push out the old guard, but kind of show them up. To be honest, to be to tell them that they're not doing their jobs and we got to do this the right way, and because she's basically trying to take this work away from that other inspector or whatever, and I think it's just so those parallels are there with them as well. But we've seen what happened with Karn. Now he's back living with his mom, but I don't think that's going to be the case for her, for Deidre. It'll be I didn't think about her being maybe a spy and coming in and getting that information. I mean, it would make sense, because one thing that I'm trying to remember now on the planet when they're all together with let's get some of these names here correctly.
I wrote
Vel and her
down,
crew. Yeah, Vel, right? That's the leader.
Vel is the leader, and then we had Skeen, Ahriman, Nemik, and Cinta. So Nemik is actually, the actor is from a couple different shows that I've watched. He's a really talented actor, and I think he fits that role really well. That was my favorite of the Rebels, was Nemik.
Right. Yeah, because he is
the younger kid. The guy.
He's the younger kid, no, right? And he was the one that built that model, and the model of
He's like, be careful with it. I just glued it, or something like that.
The glue was just there. I mean, the way they wrote him was perfect, because I feel that's all of us. We're just like, oh, wait, just like, let's be a little bit careful, and actually it's 52 clicks, and all this stuff. Where this is the Star Wars fans actually that they're calling to right there. So I think that was really good.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did want to clarify, and I'm trying to make sure I understand this, and because we got Skeen, Terriman, Cinta, Nemec, and Vel, of course, right?
Yes, and then later on at the end of the episode, closer to the end of the episode, there's another lieutenant that joins named Gorn.
Right.
Which was
I thought was, by the way, speeder bikes. Love speeder bikes. One of my favorites. One of my favorites in Star Wars. So when he came rolling in on that, I was super pumped.
Yeah, he made a pretty neat entrance.
Yeah. So we've got them, and of course Cassian, also known as Clem, to round out that's because she said there were 7 now, right?
Right. So she noted 7, and obviously that doesn't include. I think she said that before talking with, when she was talking with Luthen. I think she noted 7, so that would not include Clem, is my understanding, and I'm not sure if that also includes Luthen.
Right. Yeah.
So if
there was a little ambiguity there,
right?
I'm not quite sure. And that's why I even brought this point up, is that is there another person,
right?
that
that's
we're
what I was
waiting
to
see?
Yeah, I would think so, just by the way that they've built the episode. Like, there's 7, and then they don't show one. It makes sense in terms of storytelling.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, is that 7th Deidre?
Okay. Right. So another thing that's briefly mentioned in this scene, it's kind of easy to gloss over. But Vel, this is before Clem has stepped out of the ship to meet Vel. Luthen is talking to Vel, and Vel or Luthen, one of the two, mentions that, I think it's Vel, mentions that they're 5 months into the plan. Now, this is part of the reason I'm not 100% into Lieutenant Miro being a rebel spy, because the timeline wouldn't necessarily add up with Vel's timeline.
Right.
Vel saying we're 5 months into this, Miro working at the Imperial Security Bureau for a year now. However, the thing that still I lean that direction is there's clearly information not being passed from Luthen to Vel, I think.
Right.
It feels to me like he is in this. In fact, what we learn later, that he has some other, alter ego,
right,
where he's this person of importance on Coruscant, meets with Mon Mothma,
art collector.
Art collector. Yeah. So he clearly has this secret identity, this public identity, I guess. And then the Luthen that Andor has met is more of who I would assume to be his real self. Also, another note I was going to make on this scene before Andor, before Andor even hops off the ship and Luthen is talking to Vel, Luthen gives him, I don't know, I think this is probably just going to end up being an Easter egg, but Luthen gives him what I think is a kyber crystal.
Right.
Yeah, and it's, this blue kyber crystal says it's worth like 50,000 credits or something like that, and Luthen Andor, while Luthen is talking to Vel, is like eyeing the ship's controls, like, should I just steal the ship and the crystal and make off with the but this is the first glimpse that we see of Andor taking those first steps, I think, toward the rebellion. He could have stolen the ship right there and that could have been it.
Right, yeah.
But this is one of the first decisions where he's like, okay, let me see what these people are about, sort of thing.
Yeah, and going back to even their first conversation of the entire episode, fighting for something real. You could steal little scraps from them here or there, or actually do something against them.
Yeah.
That conversation, that's one of the classic conversations in all heroes, protagonists, that they have to come across at some point. When they're dealing with a bigger power that's against them. How do I want to do this fight, or do I want to actively be part of this fight? So that first scene really set the tone for the rest of Cassian's life, really.
Yeah.
If you think about it. And but there will always still be moments of weakness where he could just dip out, because it sounds like in the past, and I forget what battle they were talking about in that first scene, where he said, I was in there for 2 years, but then Luthen called him on it and said, oh, you were there for 6 months.
Right. Yeah. He knows so much about him. Right.
Yeah. So he knows I know that you're a runner, so don't tell me that, you're all brave and all this when I know that you run when things get harder, so so even in the moment where he's thinking about maybe stealing the ship, kind of just look at the controls or whatever it was, it still shows that, that flight or fight type of thing. And once again, he just chose maybe the droid told him, maybe deter him a little bit, but also he made the active decision to stay.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I was going to say with the next scene and the rebels, I guess you wouldn't even call them the rebels at this point.
Right.
The would-be rebellion, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, I guess even before that, we learned that the system that Andor committed this crime on of killing these two guys in the previous episode is now completely under Imperial control. That's sort of that scene with Karn and the other two employees of the private organization, which I think, if I remember correctly, I always forget what they called that. I wrote it down in my notes from last week. Let's see if we can just find it here real quick. The Premor Company.
Premor, yeah.
Yeah, the Premor Company. The two other, I guess, lackeys are. I thought that was a funny scene where what does Partagaz say that he's lined all three of them up, and it's like one of them raises their hand and he says something along the lines of like, are you kidding me? Or what does he say?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
something to the effect of like, put your hand down.
Yeah, right.
So I noted that. Exactly. I thought that was pretty funny as well. How they managed to work like humor into an episode of a show that really didn't have a lot of humor in it. In fact, maybe that was the only humorous moment that I can recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, probably.
But anyways, back to, I guess, to the rebels. They are walking Andor through this plan of like what their mission is in order to get past this garrison. And they're talking about like,
well, he finds out that it is actually an armory.
Right.
They have to go through. Right.
Right. And it's like well guarded by, was it 40 men, I think?
40.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's like, this is a suicide mission. And then they start talking about this like convoluted plan where it's like the things are gonna like erupt from the ground, and I'm like, what is gonna happen? Like, I'm excited to see the scene. Don't get me wrong, but something that only happens once every 3 years.
Every 3 years, right? And the one lieutenant, I've been here 7 years. I've seen it twice, and I'm like, oh, is that? I mean, they put so much emphasis on it, and I understand, like, I think they really wanted to to show what the Empire has done to the people of the planet. This was something that was very important to them at one point. And, the lieutenant even said, it's kind of sad to see what it's become because, all of them have been driven out of the areas that, normally they would celebrate this,
Right.
So I think that is probably more of the message that, they wanted to push was, the Empire, what the Empire has done to the citizens of this planet. I mean, obviously this festival sounds incredible, or this event sounds incredible. And yeah, I'm with you. I can't wait to see how this is going to pan out. Obviously, they have all of this very intricate plan that must happen, step by step. Everything has to go exactly right in order for them to not only do what they want but also survive.
Yeah.
But you and I know that's not going to happen.
Sure,
it's not. It's not. There's going to be some issues that are going to come along the way. Someone's going to, someone from the Empire is going to do something unexpected, and they're going to have to adjust accordingly. And it's going to, that's where. So this band here is not going to be, although crazy and possibly great, is not going to be the final plan. It happens in the the last couple episodes of the series.
Right. I also loved that part of the rationale for convincing Andor, or Clem as they know him, to join the mission. When they tell him there's 40 people, he's like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And their rationale is that they only keep 40 there because they're too cocky to think anyone will attack. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So like the fact that they don't expect it is the reason that we'll succeed. You're like, okay,
right, yeah.
I guess,
I mean, there is logic there. It's flawed, but it's whatever helps you see. And I think it's one of those where you're just like, well, we don't have a great chance, but this is probably why it's like this,
right?
So that's to our advantage, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's essentially kind of in terms of the main plot points where the episode leaves off. There's like a few minutes afterwards, but I felt like the ending, and maybe it was just the way that the episode was laid out. It was odd. I thought I enjoyed the episode.
Yeah.
But it was almost like it was the middle third of a movie where the beginning didn't really feel like, I felt like I just jumped into it, and then the ending felt kind of like, oh, the episode's over. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Normally I don't look at like the time of when.
Yeah, I don't
when
either.
Episodes, like where I am in the episode, whatever. But
right.
I expected the content would give me like a natural close to an episode. Right. Yeah, I didn't get that from this one. It was like just kind of just said, here you go. This is we ran out of tape. This is where we'll end today. That's what it felt.
Yeah. It was just kind of like a pan onto Andor, and then it cut, and then just like you have that feeling of like, oh, there's something next coming that we'll see before the end. Or, it feels like the end of the episode is coming closer, and it was like, oh no, that was the end.
Right.
Which
and go ahead.
No. Mine is not as related to the actual specifics of the episode as it is the episode as a whole. So go ahead.
No, and one thing I did want to go back to is that conversation with Mon Mothma and Luthen.
Yeah.
That they had in the art gallery.
Yes.
The mention of a friend. Mon Mothma said that she had a friend that would be because Luthen is obviously anxious about getting payment for some of the things that they need to do to run this whole operation, and it seems that it's getting a lot harder for Mon Mothma to move this money around in order for her to get it to them. That, then now she just feels, and she, quote, she feels under siege. But she's thinking about bringing a particular friend into this inner circle. Any thoughts on who that could be?
Oh man, that is. I mean, I feel like my gut is telling me it could be Bail Organa.
I was thinking the same.
I don't know another obvious direction. I think that's the obvious direction they could go.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of like, if they want to make it like
reach.
Yeah, if they want to like make it a reach and kind of, I thought So I was thinking about this too. I thought one of the directions they could go that would be kind of a meme. What, what if they bring in what's the name of the general, the Mon Calamari? Admiral Akbar.
Akbar.
I would love to see. I want to see Akbar in this show at some point.
That's actually pretty good. I mean, being part of it. I mean, he's a big part of it, and I think, and I know that you're in this boat too. He was not fully respected in the sequel trilogy. Unfortunately, he just kind of. By the way, Admiral Akbar's dead. Type of thing. It was
people forget.
I think, yeah. So maybe that'd be a good one too. But yeah, I think the safe bet, the even bet would be Bail Organa, where because you see because he's in Rogue One,
yeah,
right, with them. So I mean, it's probably him. But of course, whenever they bring something up like this, you're just like, ooh, who could it be?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the safe bet as well.
It's 8-year-old Luke Skywalker.
Right, yeah.
However old he'd be at this point. No, he'd be a little bit older than that, I think.
Yeah, because he's probably about what? He's probably a teenager at that point, right?
I think so, yeah.
Is he 18, 19 around the Battle of Yavin? I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that is roughly there, somewhere around there. He's probably an early teenager at this point, yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Or maybe a young optimistic Leia as well. We just saw her in the end of Obi-Wan during Obi-Wan.
Sure.
So
well, and actually,
well.
I don't think we'll see Luke or Leia in this show, but I think if I had to put a bet on which one we'd be more likely to see, I think it'd definitely be Leia. I mean,
for sure, because she's already involved in the Senate.
Right.
And
I think
all that,
I'd be shocked if we don't see Bail Organa. So
right.
I think they're probably, if we do see, I think we will see Bail. But I think there's a small chance that they might throw Leia in there, just as kind of like a, fan appeal,
fan service,
fan service. Yeah. Especially, they'll probably use the same actress if they do it from the Obi-Wan show. So,
right.
But yeah, I think it is. I think it is Bail, the friend that Mon Mothma is referring to.
Right. I think it's smart to just link all of these things together. But I would like them to, if they could throw a curve here, that would be great too. I would be fine with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it'd have to be somebody that we know. They wouldn't mention somebody that we don't know.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of Rogue One, where Bail Organa actually says that to them to say like, "Oh, I've got somebody that could help us." And they said, "Do can you trust them?" And he's like, I trust her with my life." So that was actually being Leia at the end of Rogue One, getting the disc there, and yeah. So it's they like to call back on these types of things all the time.
Yeah. I don't think this is the person Mon Mothma is referring to, because I think he's already like established within the would-be rebellion, kind of his position as a extremist. But I think Saw Gerrera, I don't think that's who she's referring to, but I'm still excited to see, because we know he's in the show. Forrest Whitaker is already confirmed to have a role in Andor, so I'm still looking forward to seeing him for the first time. We didn't get any Saw Gerrera in episode 4. Hopefully, I feel like episode 5 is a pretty natural place to put him in. Like, we've just met all these rebels, like we're getting ready to go into this garrison. This I feel like episode 5 is, I think it's a safe bet to say we'll probably see Saw in episode 5, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think they did make mention. They said his name for the first time in the series.
Yes.
When the younger rebel, what was his name again? Namek.
Yes, the boy or the
Namek,
girl?
Namek. Yeah, Namek. Yeah, he fell asleep on the post, right?
Yeah.
And the other guy came in and mentioned Saw there, so I'm like, oh well, we know he's there. Yeah. So,
well, he also highlighted Saw's nature, like when he said that too. He's like, if you were with Saw's group, like he would have, like, I don't remember what he said, but he would have killed you, and so. Already giving us like a little foretaste of what Saw is gonna be like. here
Right.
in the next episode or two, hopefully.
Right. And that's I would love to see, this is kind of going outside of the series, Star Wars always does that to you. I would love to see just a long storyline of Saw from the beginning to the end, because obviously we've kind of seen it in the Clone Wars animated series, going through Rogue One, and he's even in some of the books, like I mentioned before. So to see how he got to where he ended up, where he was, because I believe it was in the Clone Wars animated series, is him and his sister. I can't remember her name now. That kind of showed up first, and that was his origins, and he was, he was kind of just like everybody else, just trying to figure out things and trying to figure out how to fight the Empire. But now, where we saw him at the end of Rogue One, where he was kind of really grisly and, he was very badly, he had like a breathing apparatus and all this stuff. And to kind of see him go from that to that, there to that, that's a hard life that person has went through. And it's all because of, fighting for, what they believe in. We see this, a lot in all of the, of all of Star Wars, how it can change people in certain ways. And that was Saw's story, but to see it now now this is the beginning really of Cassian's journey, and we know how that ends as well. But to see this, see it here as well is going to be, it's been exciting. It's been fun to watch so far.
Yeah. Also, Stila Guerrera.
Stila, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Stila.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah,
I don't have that information. There are some people that are really good. I have some Star Wars Twitter friends that are really, really good at like Star Wars trivia like that. They compete in all the contests and stuff like that. Shout out to Force Toast podcast. There's two women that are actually in the Chicagoland area that are really, really good at Star Wars trivia.
Oh, nice.
And they would know like, Saw's sister's name. They would know the scrolls of all of the all of the movies, and the opening scrolls are other movies. It's just it's amazing the knowledge that the Star Wars fans can contain.
We've got to do a trivia episode at some point.
Oh
Maybe
my
like
gosh, yeah.
in this short time span between Andor, or no, I guess we have Tales of the Jedi before Andor season 1 even ends.
Yeah.
But maybe like between Tales of the Jedi and Mando season 3, or no? Because wait, we get Ahsoka.
Wait. Yeah, Ahsoka's there too.
We'll fit in a trivia episend somewhere.
Yeah. Just a quick little 10-minute. Who's gonna win this one?
Yeah.
We'll have people bring in send in questions, and then we'll see how we do.
There we go. That'd actually be pretty fun. We get questions from viewers and test our knowledge. Get us some tough, real challenging ones.
Yeah. We'll have them graded ones though, like like real easy ones, and then just give us some softballs, and then what was the name of the third officer? One of those.
What was the background character in episode 8 what was the name of the fourth, whatever those guards were called who were guarding Snoke? What was his name?
Right, yeah. Praetorian Guards. What was his name?
Praetorian Guards, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess in summary, I liked the episode. Like we said, nothing like particularly over the top or action oriented. We just got a lot of, we got more information. We learned about motivations. We met new characters, which was probably my personal favorite part of the episode. Getting to see Mon Mothma was like pretty cool. I was like, oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
But also like I really do like the dynamics of the rebel group.
Yes.
The Andor is kind of finding his path with, and I'm hoping they attack the place next episode. Like if I have to wait 2 more episodes to see him attack the place, I'm gonna be like, oh come on, man.
Come on, right? Yeah. Because even the way they left it, they said you got to know this by the morning.
Right. Yeah.
Because they said what, 3 days? Is that how much time they have until they plan to get this done?
Yes. 3 days until the big day. So
Right. So
or no,
hopefully it's not like 3 episodes.
5 days.
Oh, right. It was 5 days. It was
5
5 days.
days.
Ooh, maybe then. I don't know.
Because
I don't know.
Luthen says for the next 5 days you're Clem.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think I hope it's the next episode too. But I could almost, because the series is what, 12 episodes, right?
12 episodes. So we're already a third of the
So
way through the first season of Andor.
mhm. Yeah, I would like to say it's going to be the next episode, but I guess it would not shock me if they stretched it one more.
Yeah.
Because I think about Mandalorian, where there were just episodes where you're just like, what's this?
Yeah.
This is kind of out of nowhere.
This definitely, I don't think it felt like a what's this episode because it gave us lots of valuable information.
Right.
But
I agree. I'm worried about the next one. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
The next episode might.
It's sort of like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this, but it's for lack of a specific analogy at the moment, it's like anything in life where you get something that is like not particularly exciting, but you're intrigued. But
Right.
the reason you're intrigued is for the hope of the eventual excitement.
Right.
Whereas if you are continuously over and over again intrigued, it starts to be like, okay, when do I get the excitement?
Right. Yeah.
So that's
when's the payoff?
When's the payoff? That's how I'm feeling right now. There's going to be one, obviously.
Right.
At least I for sure hope so.
Right. And I think even about how they released these episodes. They did the first 3, and then they did this one.
Yes.
The first 3, I mean, really was like a movie in itself.
Yes.
If you're right. So that seemed logical how they did that.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that this one would not fit in those 3. I mean, not saying that they would ever release 4, that would be crazy, but the fact that it released 3, I was super happy about. But I see why they did it that way, because that builds everything up to here.
Right.
This is almost like the second movie or whatever. That could be a movie in itself. Here's the next part. Here's the sequel.
It's very smart storytelling if you think about it. Like, there's no Jedi. There's really not even been that much action thus far. We had, I think it was episode 3 where we had the scene where there was like all that stuff falling from the ceiling and
yeah, right.
But like that's probably
the craziest physics in Star Wars you've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. But that's probably the most action we've had in the show. And so to release 4 episodes separately that really lack like the action that I think a lot of people watch Star Wars for, I think would lose a good portion of the audience, especially if they have to wait over a month for the first like real battle scene. Yeah. Like, can you imagine us getting these episodes 1 week at a time? And we're 5 weeks in and we haven't had a battle scene yet.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good, it's a good marketing maneuver, because now we're probably going to get a battle scene in the 3rd week, which is a lot easier to come to terms with than having to wait over a month. So.
Right. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's Star Wars. I mean, we'll sit here. Honestly, we would sit here for 5 weeks and wait for that.
Oh yeah,
happiness, But they do. I think about how I was kind of geeked out about the speeder bike. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. When the TIE fighters rolled in too, it actually gave me a little bit of like, oh,
yeah.
As small as it was, I was watching it. I watched it first just on my computer, then I watched it again on my big TV with like the stereo surround and all that. And whoa, that was a whole different experience. That particular thing was way louder when when I had it hooked up to the and that it got me right here. You're just like, oh, this is pretty scary. But so to have waited this long for a battle scene, you're right. I mean, it could have been really bad. Reviews would have been bad. I mean, I don't normally look at reviews of these types of shows. I kind of hear about things on Twitter here and there, but particularly this one, I'm just enjoying the ride here.
Yeah.
Especially since you and I are doing this, I'm like, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't need to be swung any other way. I just want to either enjoy it or not enjoy it on my own.
Yeah, I've definitely intentionally ignored reviews more than I would normally, because to try to keep my thoughts just completely uninfluenced whenever we're discussing the episodes.
Right.
But for this episode in particular, now that we've had our our discussion about it and kind of broke it down a little bit, I am probably interested to check out some of the reviews because
Hmm.
just me thinking what the general audience how they perceive the episode, I don't
Right.
feel like it would probably be that good. As much as I enjoyed it, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious to
Right.
hear how everyone else enjoyed it.
Yeah, and and you mentioned last episode, either last episode or you and I were just talking about it offline about how we started watching these episodes with the subtitles on, just so we can get every little bit of information really of that. That's how I was able to catch like Ryloth being mentioned and
Yeah.
Scarif and all these things, and those are very specific things that we know about. Ryloth, the planet of the Twilight, and Scarif obviously being a big part of Rogue One. So,
Yeah.
I think those are things like you said that maybe some people just don't know about and don't care about. But I see it as important things to one keep the fans happy. To be like, oh yeah, see these all do link up, and two to just continue to have that continuity within all of their everything that they're putting out.
Yep. It's one big Star Wars world. And even with subtitles, I was still able to mess up the character names. Forgive me.
Right? Yeah, you're. That's all right.
Deidre Miro, not
Yes.
not Grandi, whoever I was talking
Right.
about earlier.
And I will say the one of the things that I do enjoy is even what you were saying, that dynamic of that kind of that rebel crew that is on that planet Aldani. Is that the name of this?
Yes, Aldani.
planet?
Yep.
Yeah, Aldani. Yeah. Kind of seeing how they work. I'm always for representation. So there was definitely a wide variety of that within that group. And my favorite out of them was the lieutenant, though. I think he was probably it might have been the speeder bike, but to see him roll in like that, I'm like that's pretty awesome. If I had a speeder bike, I would just ride it into work and everywhere. It's like that.
Yeah.
But you could tell that he had a right. He found out that Andor or Clem was now part of the group. His voice was louder than all of theirs. When he found out that information. So to kind of see that, because how important it is to them. I mean, we're assuming. I mean, it seems like he's part of the Empire. Is that what you kind of got away from him?
Part
that
of
he was
the Empire?
He's like a spy of some sort. Did you get that feel?
I didn't get that vibe at all. Wait, you're talking about Lieutenant Gorn, the one who showed up last? Really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get that vibe. I have to go rewatch it.
I kind of had that feel where he had some, some involvement there. I don't know if, and I don't know if I'm just completely reading it wrong. I've been known to do that, but I feel that if we're talking about spies, double spies that are in there, I feel like he has that, because I don't know, it's just a presence. It was just like him, the way he was. It was very imperial. The way it was just a little bit different from everyone else.
I'm gonna have to go rewatch the episode now and maybe I missed that, but you know what vibe I got from him. He strikes me as the character archetype who is like kind of the bully at first, but then like ends up being the first person to sacrifice themselves when stuff hits the fan.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of the vibe I got. Like, I feel like when they attack the place, I would put money on him being the first one to bite the dust.
Yeah. Right.
But maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. I got to go rewatch it and see if I can pick up on these Imperial vibes.
Right. Yeah. So that was subtle to me, but I think that's for some reason that's how I viewed him, like pretty instantly too. I'm like, oh, this one's clearly the spy. Whatever. That's how I felt with it. But like I said, I've been known to be very, very wrong. Put in the comments how wrong I am if you believe that I'm wrong.
Everyone watching on YouTube. By the way, if you're listening to this on any podcast platform, we film this and we record it and we upload it to our YouTube channel, Hoth Hangout, as well, if you'd like to see the video version. But yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments. How did you view Lieutenant Gorn, and what do you think the show has in terms of plans for him? Well,
And I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I could see it happening. You never know. They could go either direction with it. So
Right.
I guess in summary, I think I gave the last episode did I give it a B plus or an A minus?
Like you were like A minus A. I think that's where you were.
I think
at.
I gave it an A minus. I'm gonna go a little. I'm gonna go. See, I want to say B, but I hate rating Star Wars stuff low, so I'm gonna go B plus.
Okay.
And it's also. I think I enjoyed it more than the first three collectively.
Okay.
Which is odd because I'm grading it lower. But I think the first three, that grade was also influenced by my initial excitement for the show. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like this episode gained intrigue from me, but I lost a little bit of like the initial excitement, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would probably give it a solid B plus. I still loved the episode. Still found it very interesting, and I'm excited for the next few. But I'm gonna go B plus. How about you?
I'm gonna give it a solid B. The excitement is, still, this is Star Wars after all, so I'm still excited about, all the new content that's coming out. But this is one of those episodes that I believe is always very, very necessary for any series. You bring in a whole the important core of the group, core of the cast, and you have to figure out exactly, who they are, and even it being a longer episode, I feel like there still could have been more. There still could have been a little bit more development in there, because I don't want this to stretch on for 2-3 episodes. I want all of this to be here. If this could have been an hour episode and have it all bundled up and patched up and ready to go, I think I'd been good with that. But I feel like there's still a little bit more that I would have wanted, particularly a little bit more with they kind of threw Karn away a little bit.
Yeah, I don't even know.
After him being such a huge part of the first 3 episodes, to just say, "Oh, he's just over there now at his mom's," that felt like almost betraying. I'm like, you made me want to hate this guy, made me want to and you and I even talked about, where's this character going to go, and this is where they put him, and I'm almost worried that they're gonna sideline him for like 4 episodes and then all of a sudden come back,
Right.
So where the first 3 episodes he was one of the main plot points of, he moved the story, so to now have him just be gone is kind of weird. But then you bring in a whole other set of people, which is great, but that's why I'm almost making it feel like the first 3 episodes was a movie in itself. There was no Bix. There was no there was no trying to think of the other characters in there. But yeah, there's but obviously we knew that, this is Cassian's series. He's going to be the one that's going to persist through the entire series.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we didn't even mention the fact that Bix wasn't even in this episode.
Right.
Kind of interesting. And the thing with Karn, like, did he even have a speaking line? I mean, he was in the scene.
He said mother.
Oh, he said mother. Okay. Yeah,
I know for sure, but I don't think he did.
If they choose to go to the direction that we discussed in the first episode of the pod, I felt like they were just setting him up to be maybe someone who, if he's not yet a spy, I think is going to be a spy for the rebellion, against the Empire.
Right, yeah.
But it was such a weird, decision storytelling wise to not include him very much in this episode.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about this episode, but yeah, I mean, they sidelined him, for whatever reason. It's just they built up so much in the first 3 episodes about him, then all of a sudden gone, so I just think that was a weird move. A lot of the people outside of Cassian and Luthen, really Luthen came in real late in the first 3 episodes, right? So really, the ones that persist, that go on to this next episode is Cassian and Luthen,
Yeah.
So that's why it feels like that was a movie. You know, that first one was a movie, and then you move,
Almost
these
separate.
characters move on to the next thing, But I'm still waiting for Bix. You and I talked about how intriguing her character is, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of her later. But right now, I don't see how you could,
Yeah.
how you would put her in the fifth episode. There's no path right now, So that's why I gave it a B, because you know going into this, just like what I said going in, for the first three episodes, when I gave it the B plus A minus. Um, there's always that worry that something is going to go wrong with how they tell the story. That's just, like I said, I'm a Chicago sports fan. Something's going to go wrong. So I'm a little bit worrisome. Um, but now them having made some of these decisions already, I'm starting to question a little bit of it. But still enjoyed the episode. I do love seeing the new cast. I love seeing some of the scenery, like especially on Coruscant. I love seeing
Beautiful, yeah.
so such vast architecture and just all of that. So I think that's always visually, it's always going to be stunning to me. So I always enjoy that. But yeah, I would give it a B, and hoping episode 5 blows me away.
I anticipate that it will, more so than any of the other. Not that the other ones haven't, but more action,
Mhm.
I guess, in episode 5 is likely coming our way.
Right.
So I guess to sum things up, we're looking forward to the next episode. Kind of like a connecting episodes with episode 4. It felt very separate from the first 3. But moving into episode 5, I would say the main things I want to see. I want to see Saw. I'm hoping that happens in episode 5. I want them to actually like give a little bit of substance to Karn's character. And then lastly, which I don't think we'll find out this information in episode 5, but I want to understand Deidre Miro's intentions better, Lieutenant Miro's intentions. Her character is up there for most intriguing for me right now. And then the very last thing, which we also talked about already, is who is this person Mon Mothma is referring to? Probably Bail Organa, but we'll see who that is.
And I'm going to say more Mon Mothma. I love that actress so much. She does such a good job.
She's great.
In that role. I got to say, even in the original trilogy, and that the Mon Mothma role has always been so powerful and so important to the Star Wars universe. To kind of have it here as well is just, when we say, like, some of this doesn't feel Star Wars. The name Mon Mothma is Star Wars, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to have her, have her do such a good job in this in this episode, I would love to see more of Mon Mothma and her involvement in everything, just as much as obviously Cassian.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I'm excited to see. I hope we don't just like get a taste of her being in it in this episode, and then it's kind of like 3 or 4
Right.
without her, and then they throw her in again at the end of the first season. But it was cool to have her, such a pivotal part of the original trilogy be able to be showcased in this 4th episode of the show. Well, if y'all have any questions for us, anything you would like us to discuss, maybe in the next or future episodes of the podcast, tweet at us at Hoth Hangout. Check us over there on Twitter, or shoot us an email at hothhangout@gmail.com. Also, this podcast is officially on most streaming platforms for podcasts. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. In addition, to those of you watching the video form of the podcast on YouTube, hi, good to have you here. And thanks for listening to the second official episode of Hoth Hangout. We're excited for episode 3 coming next week. Every Thursday morning, new episodes. Joey, any final thoughts on the episode before we wrap things?
I think it's Star Wars, man. I'm always happy to talk about Star Wars.
Me too. I love it. Well, again, thanks y'all for listening. It's been a blast. Until next week's episode, I feel like we should have some Star Wars saying or pun that I'm throwing out right now, but for the sake of cheesiness, may the Force be with you. Take care, everyone.
I knew it. Bye-bye.